this all about? So I'm going to open with a question. What would change if you were more effectively communicating vision that speaks? What would change if you were more effectively communicating vision that speaks? This begs for a definition right out of the gate. So let's define vision. And I know we've heard of this thing, vision casting. You know, I think many of us have heard that concept of vision casting. And so I'm going to define this vision casting as vision casting is the process of identifying a picture of the future in a tangible way, trying it out, and inspiring others to see it. Okay, it's the process of identifying a picture of the future in a tangible way, trying it out, and inspiring others to see it. And as was already mentioned, when even approaching this entire series on how to lead, you know, a wild approach to how to lead and leadership basics, I want you to know that as I was even doing some research on this for today, I'm not coming to you saying like, let me tell you the 3 to 5 steps to effective vision. I'm not going to do that. What I want to do is tell you what some of the things that have come out of that, and also some of the things I continue to learn as I walk into this. So why vision? And I think this is for those of you who are, some of you are more senior leaders where you're responsible for actually creating the initial vision. And many of us are operating within structures where we're responsible for communicating a vision that weren't the ones who saw first. Do you know what I'm saying? Like we're working within a system where that's our responsibility. And I think it's interesting when we even thinking about some of you who are thinking, how do I teach the managers within my organization how to communicate vision? So many of them are responsible for casting a vision that someone else provided to them. And so I want to deal with some of that. But when we talk about this, what are we really asking? And I think in some ways what we're asking them is we're asking leaders to motivate people towards something. So there's a lot of motivation in this, right? Motivation is a combination of compelling and a specific mission or goals alongside a deeper purpose that serves others. And we know this is true, that individual contributors need to be able to see their own contribution to success. There's some really interesting psychology around this, like the necessity for us seeing how is what I'm doing contributing to the mission we're on, even this larger vision that someone else had. And I think one thing that's also, I want to say this out of the gate, that vision communication, like communicating vision cannot happen without true vision creation. If you don't see something, you don't have that picture, there's nothing to communicate. And I think that's one of the hardest parts. And I think another thing that I'll unpack in just a moment is that sometimes telling the story includes some vulnerability. Like even being able to put a vision out there includes some of that. I want to add something else to visioning that we don't talk about that much. And it's this, that I think vision creation and communication at its best is a selfless process that also includes the self. You know what I'm saying? It's something that is about others, in a service to others in a certain way, but it also includes us. And so often, I cannot tell you how many successful businesses, when I say successful, I'm talking financially killing it, businesses we deal with where the vision is not clear. So I want to remove I think it's a myth that a business cannot succeed financially without a compelling vision, because it's happening all the time. So we need to be really careful about how we think about these things. Here are some of the characteristics. I'm going to throw out a big list, and I know that Claire will attempt to put this in the chat so you can have these notes, but I'm just going to give you some of the characteristics of what a vision is, what an effective vision would be about. An undeniable need and a transcendent purpose. A population that will be served. Something just ahead of its time. This is where it gets difficult, because a lot of visions are happening before they're within convention. they will not make sense to much of the world when you first see them. Formed out of multiple attempts that are not quite there. Like so often, the best visions of what could be are formed out of multiple attempts. I would go so far as to say failures that didn't quite hit it. It solves multiple problems or addresses multiple needs. May include a sacrifice that some sacrifice might be necessary. This makes it kind of real. Like to actually see this vision to come to life would be maybe something that I personally would need to sacrifice. A potential that opens up because of it. An alignment with the specific value or skill set or competence that a team or organization brings. I think that's where the deeper wisdom on vision creation comes, is like it's wired into something that we actually are in a unique position to bring. It will require ongoing maintenance. You know what I mean? Like we go back to the eye doctor. We have to continue to work on seeing it clearly and understanding it. And there's a bunch of other things that I would say that are a part of that, like including it comes at the right time. All of these things would be characteristics. And I think it also would include a question into which to invite people. So one of the things about effective visioning is a vision that invites people to see it has the possibility of people seeing their own story within it. So it's still true to the vision, but they could see their own story. And this is why so much of what we do at WiLD Leaders is working with leaders to shift their paradigm from telling people to inviting people through questions. So the invitation to see like their own story within it is something that's we don't do that well so often. And I'll put one other characteristic. It's slightly impossible to imagine. You know what I mean? Like the beginning vision is something. So I want to just tell you about a couple of my best visions. All right. And one of them was the establishment of a master's and a PhD program in industrial organizational psychology at Seattle Pacific University. And I got to tell you, the vision for that, when I started, I was pretty much alone. I felt like I had zero business launching a program with that level of rigor, where most of the competitors were state institutions where students would come and be fully funded to go to school. So I'm going to launch a program at this little faith-based institution in Seattle, Washington. But I had this idea because when I look back at my career, I started when I was in my late 20s, I got a job as director of a program that was similar, but not really in the same, it was close, but it actually gave me some insight early on into what this thing could become. And here's what's fascinating, is that the literal vision for that program that has now had nearly 400 graduates from it, the literal vision for that program that I was a part of was a piece of paper. It was 55 pages long, the actual proposal, and I had to fight for it. But it was this proposal that I still keep, because it was like, it's an amazing thing when something that was a bunch of pieces of paper that you had to fight for to get approval becomes something where you look around a program in a room. Some of the people who were part of that process are here today, and you look around and you see human beings sitting in seats, experiencing something that you go like, this is what I believed could happen, but I wasn't quite sure. And so that was one of them. The second one was there's so many things that were such difficulties at the time. We created a process I created this thing called a non-conference conference at one point, because I wanted to create a conference that would not be a normal conference. I didn't want any famous speakers to come. I wanted it to be all based on questions. I wanted it to be a group of people who would gather together, who would meet to have an amazing conversation around some deep topics related to organizing and leadership. Is this sounding familiar? And I called it, Why Are You? The letters, why are you? Like I went and got the URL for that. And we created this experience that was this thing. And we were trying to see like who would come. And the first time like 300 people showed up. And I tell you that about that vision for that, because It's exactly what the WiLD conversation was based on, some of our learning in that space of an original vision that was kind of not quite there. And then this became something that was more like that. The other thing that I want to mention that was a vision I was a part of is sometimes the vision that you grab onto is not yours. So I have a leader from India who shows up in Seattle and he says, I'm launching a university that will provide education to Dalit and tribal people in India. And it was his vision. Like it literally was, it came in a dream. Like it's this unbelievable thing. It's an impossible thing to imagine. And I immediately thought, like, I think I'm supposed to be a part of that. And so it was interesting because it wasn't my vision, but I found place to see things that were a part of my unique contribution within the context of that larger vision. Let me give you some of the myths. I want to, like, regarding what visions are about, like these visions of what an organization would look like, or what a, could be all kinds of things. But let me give you some of the myths that I hope for some of you, this will encourage you. One thing is this, I already mentioned this, without a successful vision, an organization will not grow. We don't actually know that's true. So I think it's important, but it may not be about organizational growth or financial growth. It may not be about that, but it could be. The number two thing, myth, communicating vision is about charisma. Like some of you need to let that land, because you're thinking, I want to get better at communicating vision and I got to be more charismatic. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying it doesn't help in some cases, but I think the communication of vision is probably more about a willingness to be vulnerable and to dig deep than it is about charisma. Like a courage to actually share something that seems ridiculous. Another one, that a vision exists on its own. I don't think it does. It exists typically, I think the greatest strategic visions exist within a relevant context. So my example is this, when I launched that industrial organizational psychology program, the context was industrial organizational psychology, which some of you have no idea what that is, except maybe you've been a part of the WiLD conversation or you heard about it somewhere. But it's a powerful, powerful guild that people don't know about that has an incredible career pathing, but also an incredible impact on the world of work. And so creating that vision for a program was within a context that was a powerful context. Another myth is this, that vision is the same thing as mission. It's not. The mission we're on is a more measurable way to, like, what are we actually trying to accomplish? The vision is this picture, like this inspiring picture that's impossible to imagine, that's something that is a deep need in the world. Another myth. Well, I kind of already mentioned this one. So I'm gonna move. The last one is that visioning is a short-term process. I really believe in my own experience that visioning is a long-term game. That this is a process of seeing something that, and think about it this way, is that it's something that we may see that may be fulfilled in the life of someone else. A colleague of mine was a part of something that I was the original person who saw the vision for this thing last night. And he sent me a text and he said, it's so strange now being in a room with all of these leaders who do not know where this experience, this amazing experience they had, came from. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, it's something that people will experience long after we're gone, potentially. And so it's a long-term story. So a couple of things in terms of the, so what does this mean, Rob? There's a lot, we're unpacking a lot here, but when we get into the practice of this, like, what are we actually to do? And so let me give you some things that might be to think about in terms of what do we do? So what are you saying, Rob? We've set it up. What are we saying? I think the first thing is this, that the process of establishing a vision most likely starts with you establishing a vision for yourself. And I don't mean necessarily your vision, but this is why the establishment and discernment of your own, the call on your life and your purpose, it probably begins there. These questions around who do you feel called to serve and why? What is it that you can't help but do well? How is the team or organization around you like strategically set up to serve? What network do you have in support? Who is around you who's around you for starters? Like, how do you begin to establish a vision without establishing some of those conversations for yourself? So starting there, what I want to move into is this, is that there is a difference between creation of a vision and casting a vision. And so one of the things that I would love to invite you into is the possibility of writing a narrative. And if it's a narrative, and when I say narrative, I mean write it down. Daniel Howlett came to me this last year and he said, Rob, the vision statement we have that you wrote is a few years old now. It's good, it's compelling, but the team you have in place is ready to go. We need to just have that statement. So I spent weeks, I felt like such a failure because I knew that Daniel asked for this, but I got to write this thing, but it took time. And it was a narrative that then what was crazy is seeing what Daniel and the rest of the team taking that and turning it into a plan of execution. But it took a narrative. So let me just ask you some of the questions. And these are hard questions. So Claire will just put them in the chat and you can chew on these later, these things later. What does the future look like for your organization? What is the problem you are looking to solve? How does it fit or not fit within the context you are currently working or leading? Be specific. Who is working there? As you see this picture, imagine this, be specific. Who's working there? How many people? What does it feel like to work there? Who is served and what happens if they aren't served? What do offices look like or Zoom conferences? What is the service or product and how is this team or organization uniquely positioned to provide it? Where do people live? What's the vision 5 years from now that excites you to your core and satisfies a deep need in the world? One of the things I would urge those of you who are responsible for vision creation is to ask those hard questions and just start writing. Just start writing. It's an incredible process. It's not everyone's job to do that all the time, because for some of us, that means understanding the context within which we are working. Like even if you're a sales leader, if you're a sales vice president, you chose to work within a certain context. And so how does your vision for what your sales team could look like fit within that larger context? Now here's another, I want to give you a few thoughts that I have about this. So when it comes to vision casting, so if you're responsible, like what are some of the things we might do to effectively cast a vision, either one that we were a part of creating or seeing, or one that we are responsible for helping other people to see? And I think the first thing is this, we have to find our own story within that larger vision. Why are you in it? You specifically. Number two, start trying it out. Tell and continue to refine the story because we learn along the way. Try it out. This is, I fish, so I fly fish a lot. And there's nothing that gives you more patience for trying it out than fishing. Like, you've got to figure out all kinds of things in order to catch fish. Another thing is this. Articulate the future state you see as the right question. So in other words, remain open to the way a person inside or outside of your organization will respond to it. Remain open to how someone else will experience that vision, even though you're staying true to that vision. Here's my next one. Be ready for vision attrition. Avoid expecting everyone to get it. For those of you in established organizations, when you establish the right vision, one of probably the effectiveness metrics would be, do a few of the people leave? And it might be a hard leaving, but it might be the right leaving, that they'll go find that right place where they're supposed to serve. I think you have to look for evidence of attraction to it. It's one of the things that I've been told over and over again is like, when we even in the establishment of WiLD Leaders years ago, someone said like, there's people who really need what you do. and people started to come. And here are a few litmus tests. Let me give you some litmus tests for the vision casting and also for the vision creation process. It's this. Hold on, I'm bouncing into one part of my notes. Give me this moment. Okay. Number one, Daniel and I talked about this on an airplane. People make fun of it. Great visions get made fun of over and over again because they're actually kind of compelling because we've heard about them so much. An ideal that seems just out of reach. And then finally this, someone around you says it's a no-brainer. I can't tell you how many times I have told someone, here's the vision I have, and someone said, and I'm like, I have no idea if this is what I'm supposed to do or see. And someone has said, it's a no-brainer, which is enough confirmation to move forward. You guys, let's get smarter together as we jump out in these conversations. That's just a little bit.